Well, now I got into the beginning of the 5th minute of the last recording, and it occurs to me that our enemies, those that, if you like, are malevolent towards us, and we don't like, of course, are constantly, if you like, attempting to alter our view by presenting possible doubts, possible alternatives to what we're holding to be the case at the minute. And this increases almost unavoidably anyway, the uncertainty with which we hold our beliefs, our view. We wobble, we weaken, we vacillate a little. We might steady ourselves and come back to our former view, but we might not. Now, if you felt that the enemy was doing this to bless you, well, it would be a different thing, but they are enemies. And by definition, therefore, we're assuming that you're seeing them as enemies, as not having your welfare at heart. Do you see you should, from that point of view, apparently, cut off from the enemy? You're not willing to listen to what he says. Now, this leaves you in your current state, or at least more so, which is, for instance, opposed to him, or earnestly seeking still, hopefully, to put things right. So, you see, what we're saying is then you need to be careful. If you think you're in a situation of malevolence coming from other person, to restrict the scope of their influence on your thinking. You don't want to be harmed by them, and that includes not wishing to damage your benevolence to them, assuming you do have a benevolence to them. The point is, I think, either way, that whether you assume that or not, you don't want them to influence your view. So you should take steps to limit the communication between you. I think it's the case that you should continue to make steps where it's economic, if you like, to do so, where it is a priority, to make peace. So you might constantly send out offers of reconciliation that are acceptable to you, of course, not that are unacceptable, in the hope that, you know, they'll take root, they'll get a good response. But when the response comes back that's not good, you don't dwell on it too much. Only sufficient to know, this is not a good response, I'll dismiss it. I had a situation when, the beginning of my 3rd marriage, where the in-laws were unutterably against me. So any communication that came to us, we agreed, my wife and I, that we wouldn't go further than the first indication in the letter or the email that was negative. And you make it clear to them, I did not read past your first negative statement. And you stick to that. You don't read past it. So they know not to make a damaging statement, an accusation. Well, you may think this paralyzes communication, and in a sense it does, but you need to paralyze bad communication, you see. I only want the good. Now, assuming you're not doing nasty things back and accusing them of this, that, and the other, this is a much better situation than the furious to and fro warfare of words. You can maintain your desire for peace, not end up in a war situation where you desire war as much as they do. Now, it will ultimately, the situation will depend on the situation of power. If they have power to, wreck your life and so on, and presumably they're going to continue doing that, but at least from your side, you're not making things worse. And circumstances may be such that it suddenly turns in their interest to accept your offers, which still keep coming because you're still purposing peace and reconciliation. Well, of course, you can take an alternative view, which is, this person's so dangerous, I just need to wipe them out, and war's the only answer. And I can imagine the situation comes to that. Can come to that, perhaps. But it's certainly not what we want. We would like a wholesome, peaceful, non-desolation outcome. War doesn't seem to do either side much good. But I do agree, my destruction doesn't do me much good either. And I'm not saying you should lay down and take it. Do you see? I'm definitely not saying that. But I'm saying that there are ways of not making it worse. And not letting your enemy influence you towards violent reaction is a major one. And he may mistakenly think this is in his best interest. Or it may be in his best interest. He wants you to be in a war situation. I guess the key thing is that obviously you don't want self-annihilation. You don't want the enemy to achieve annihilation of you. But your next priority is you don't want him to be annihilated either. Now, we may view it as cardinal. I don't want my annihilation at all costs. But that narrow goal actually increases uncertainty and the possibility of annihilation because it ignores that there are ways of avoiding war very often. And it's best to keep those avenues open, it seems, in general. To do that, then, you minimize the communication from the enemy, except that from the enemy which is conciliation, reconciliation. You don't ignore olive leaves, indications that he'd like to make some sort of concession. Do good to those that hate you, you see. Seems not to be the way to go, but is. Thank you, Dad.